Hi everyone, this is again a part continuation video of my previous video where I talked about some environmental toxins and physical toxins that can impact people's health and in the long run can influence the death related factors of someone's life. How the factors I discussed in the previous video could have influenced Uriel's death is also something I might discuss in this video if I get the time. But in my previous video, there's a last reference example that I put in there, which is related to glass recycling that is happening in US. And there you will see that some of the people, while handling the crushed glass particles, they were wearing protective equipment, because you can see in some of the places where the glass dust is arising, and that glass dust, if very made of very sharp consistency, even if it is not too sharp, because it's a toxin, it's not a easily immersible element that will mix easily with our body. So as a result, if it is getting inhaled, it will be considered as a toxin by our body, because it can't easily merge with our body, easily dissolve in our body, and if very sharp, can also cause cutting inside our internal organs and other health damages inside. And we all know, as I mentioned in my previous video, that how if we just while cleaning up some glass that is broken on the table or floor of our homes, when we are cleaning up some glass particles, dust particles gathered as a result of crushed grass, at that time when our hands and foot can get micro pricks or injuries when we touch that surface, or the glass ends up pricking us. At that time, we can also, if it is even more sharper glass, it can embed in our skin, it can go inside our skin, and it gets very difficult to get out glass splinters or wood splinters when something microparticulate like that and sharp like that and enters our skin. But what happens to a skin on the exterior is, as I said, much more, a skin on the exterior surface has much more thicker consistency, much more protective layers to it, whereas our internal organs do not have that many protective layers sometimes. And if other underlying health conditions were going on with someone, or if someone was a smaller size baby, or if there was also some women or men who had malnutrition when they were growing up in their childhood, all of these can also be developed, or they had some exposure to some toxin that led to internal organ damages even before they were born. All of these can lead to internal damages that can go on in a person's health, that will not be very easily visible on the outside at first. Whenever internal body, while external body damages are very easily felt by us or easily visibly seen by us, internal body damages are not always that easily felt or seen by us. And because it's not easily felt and seen by us, we do have systems that will help us in detecting or giving the hint that something wrong is going with our health. That's why only when it is important to understand why drugs or chemicals or allergens all have a potential to cause this external skin damage, where yes, most people will challenge me if I say that Uriel's red cheeks are indicator of her healthiness. But here also I will give another reason why she may have unusually red cheeks, not simply because she was an American child, because while it is true that many American children can naturally have rosy cheeks, and many Caucasian children can naturally have this rosiness to their cheeks, rosiness to the cheeks can also arise, redness on your skin can also arise, not simply because you are naturally that cute looking. It can also arise when a response to a toxin is happening to your body, and it is more starkly visible in those children who are not 100% Caucasian. And if you do look at Nicole's mother's side of the family, Nicole's mother's side of the family, according to me, genetic analysis can be very easily done to prove or disprove my theory. But according to me, they seem to have more Native American roots. They also live in Florida. So, Florida being closer to even South American and Central American countries, the probability of them having Native American roots is higher, as well as they do have some characteristics that show that they have more Native American bone structure, body structure. So, if they have more of the Native American roots, and if you are more of a Native American, understand that this redness of cheeks is not a Native American trait. It is more of a trait of those who have Caucasian or those who live in tundra like areas, like those who live in Greenland, Iceland, colder parts of Canada, type A, Russia, these type of place inhabitants, they usually get the redness of the cheeks, and there's a biological and physiological reason why you will get that redness of cheeks, and that redness of cheeks that manifests when you are in colder areas. But other than that, and that's why Caucasian children will, people with certain genetic characteristics are more going to have that redness naturally than those who do not have those genetic traits. So if I was from India, or I'm a Native American, and or from Central America like regions, those type of people, or even if someone is African American, all of these people, if you have that kind of genetic history or more of that genetic history, the likelihood of the redness happening from other causes is more possible and plausible. And the other causes of these redness are the fact that there are drugs that have already been tested and shown to cause excess redness in the cheeks and skin when excess exposure to that drug has happened. And that's why in my third video, the possibility of all the drug related elements of that area, why that needs to be explored for Uriel or any other child that has these kind of unusual symptoms on their skin. It is important because skin being an absorptive organ, the clothes or clothing like materials that a child wears, as well as the water that is used for bathing and cleaning the child, as well as the water that a child uses for drinking, as well as the environment condition of the bed where the child is sleeping, or the surfaces that the child touches while sitting and sleeping, or while getting transported from one place to the other. The materials and environmental toxins of all these places are also equally relevant factors that influence a child's health. Initially, that shows up as a skin like symptom, but can actually be also, if enough of toxins were building up in that child's body, it can also show up in the child's internal organ damages related symptoms as well, slowly over time. And with Uriel, the time she had 7 months of earthly existence, but understand that even with Uriel, not simply the 7 months of external exposure to external environment toxin was playing a role in her health. If her mother was during her pregnancy also, let's say during the 6 months 7 months that Uriel was born, in that 6 months 7 months her mother only took Uriel couple of handful of times to the business locations. But even before that, 9 months her mother was carrying Uriel inside her uterus as well, in her womb as well. So when she was pregnant with Uriel, and in the initial months of the pregnancy, if she didn't know she was pregnant with Uriel, those time points also are the time points when she could have done some business meetings and gone in the construction areas related to her work, related to her sister's work, related to other things where environment pollutants might have been there in her environment, like when she goes even for hair appointments. I mentioned it very briefly in the last video, but even hair sprays, chemicals used in a hair parlor, any chemicals that humans use in their regular homes, in their cars, in their daily life, all chemicals when inhaled by us have a potential to get accumulated in our body over time of exposure to multiple things. One thing in a large amount can also lead to a lot of diseases. Multiple things in small micro amounts can also lead to diseases. And while in the past century most of the studies related to health and healthcare were about how one thing in large amount, one thing in great extent is getting diagnosed and treated by us, in this century there are many aspects of living where micro exposures to small seemingly harmless things, when taken together, can lead and build up to a large scale health harm, slowly developing in a body that people are unaware it's developing, especially when only external minor symptoms are showing up, which is getting ignored as allergy, when it could be something more than allergy showing up in a child's body. And sometimes the allergies can get masked, as I said in the previous video, if you were taking anti-allergy medicine. So if I was not taking any anti-allergy medicine, I'm going to continuously scratch my face. That can tell someone that I have some allergic response happening to my face, right? Or if redness, and in my videos you can see I'm not developing any redness, I'm not taking any anti-allergy medicine, I'm also not developing any redness. But does it mean an allergen is not coming in contact with my skin? No. The fact that I'm continuously scratching means that there is something in the air environment of this home that is toxic to my body, and that's why it's accumulating here. And God again made me do this. I went and touched my ears, because what is also happening, what is accumulating in this, what is there in micro or nanoparticle level, where my visible eye can't detect what is there in the environment. But anyone with mold toxicity screening or fungal toxicity screening, and having the right equipment to, or right lab methods to detect all kinds of or different kinds of mold toxins, can only actually determine what level of mold, what level of fungus is there in this home environment. Because if I have equipment that is only able to detect 3 variants of molds or funguses, but actually the variant that is there in this home is another variant, then also even if I go to a lab for testing it, I may get a false negative saying that there is no mold in my home environment. But that doesn't mean that there is no mold. It just means that the mold that they are testing for may not be the mold that is actually there in this house, or the fungus they are testing for may not be the fungus strain that is in this house. So this crucial discernment related thing is also very important for understanding that certain diseases can still manifest with people thinking they are clean, they are healthy, they don't have a problem because the test showed it is negative, when in fact the opposite also could be arising. With the ear, why the ear was important is because while I'm awake and I'm sitting and something might be there in the air touching my skin, giving me skin irritation, that same thing which I can't see visibly, I'm also inhaling if it is out there in front of me, around me in this room, right? So if microparticles of it is there around in this room that visible eye can't detect, even if visible eye is not detecting, or if a lab test is also not able to conclusively prove, but if it is health harming, if it is something that is toxic to my body and it is coming in contact with me, it is not simply coming in contact with my skin. While I'm talking, while I'm working, while I'm just regularly sitting in the home, writing, doing nothing, just vegetating, it is also getting inhaled by me. It is also some of it while I'm sleeping on this bed, because the particles are there in this room, some of it is also falling inside my ears, and my ear will show a response to a toxin in how, in either you will develop we have the lymphatic system's responses and immune system's responses working in our ENT area. So in this area, when our lymphatic system and immunological responses are developing, if I have micro particles developing in my body, and my ears usually when any kind of toxin enters my ears, if it is like a fungus toxin or a microparticle of dust particle entering my ear, or some microbe entering because of flu season, some virus or bacteria might have entered in my ear, at those time points what happens is I get before I get a ear infection, the first way my body will intimate me that something microbial or small particle has entered my ear is by producing ear wax. And for some people it is thick thick ear wax if they have the capacity to produce thick ear wax. So my brother, when he has ear infection or ear related problems, he develops real solid like waxy material, like how beeswax is really solid, that level thick waxy material develops in his ears because his body has that genetics. Whereas my body doesn't have that genetics, and my body doesn't even go to that level. My body first produces oily substances to trap oily and other immunological responses to trap that particle, and it gives me irritation in like how my skin is getting irritated. My ear also, we get ear itching also sometimes, right? That itching in the ear that you will get, or if you ever clean your ear with the earbuds that people used to clean their ear with earlier, you will see that when you use your earbuds, oily particle will wrap around the earbud, and oily and dirty, if dust was responsible in India especially, this is very true because India has a lot of dust pollution. So if I use those earbuds to clean my ear, and because oil is generated, the oil traps the dust particles and other microbes as well, if other microbes are also involved in it, and it traps it, and it when I brush around my ears with the earbud, the oily and dirty ingredients will come out of my ear. So I do very regular ear cleaning like that to ensure that it doesn't go to the solid waxy level. So very rarely, I have never gone to a doctor for any ear wax accumulation related purposes, because when it is in the oily stage only, I clear it up and I try to expel it out of my body. And same way how the ear itching gives me a mindfulness related step that I can do to help ensure my ear can stay cleaned. And if you are mindful like that, do I have to go to the doctor? When do I have to go to the doctor? I have to go to the doctor when this itching and irritation is at a level that is not manageable by simply clearing it with a earbud, right? At that time, the infection level also which will develop in me if I go to a doctor will be a little moderate to higher level ear infection compared to someone who is never paying attention to their ears, who's never cleaning their ears. If you never clean your ears and then you arrive at a doctor, you might have a mild infection also going on. But if you are someone who does some mindfulness practices, this is also something doctors need to realize. Any patient who does some mindfulness related health caretaking in these simpler kind of steps or preventative care like steps, when you do that in your home life, daily life regularly, that patient, when they go to a doctor, they are not approaching a doctor when they have a mild health crisis. Most mild health crisis, they are usually managing at a very manageable stage at home life, preventative care stages at home life. When that kind of a patient is going to a doctor, they are reaching a doctor when they have some moderate to high level problem going on that is not resolvable by simple ear cleaning or simple measures of anti-allergy medicines given to a patient to stop the allergy from happening. Those things will not be the intervention level at which that patient is operating. So this is also something people have to understand about a patient, and a patient himself has to understand. Why I mentioned Uriel's mother's case is because, and I don't know, again, when I said Rebecca is Uriel's aunt. It is possible that Uriel's mother and aunt, they both have their work environment related health problems cropping up in their health, but it has not been put to two and two of their work environment impacting their health hasn't happened. And in case of both, if you look at, I haven't seen Rebecca's husband, but Uriel's mother and Rebecca, her sister, both of them, their husbands being men, if their husbands being men, and if their husbands are more robust men, taller men, fatter men, in that scenario, when a man is more taller, fatter, more muscular in nature, and has a bigger build in size, understand that the same level toxin exposure, if both husband and wife were in the same facility for 4 hours, the level of toxic impact on the husband might be slightly less than the level of toxic impact that will happen to a wife who is shorter in height, shorter in structure, and also being a woman, there is some differences between men and women. And similarly, when a child is there, obviously if a child is, if they're, they have a 13-year-old son, so if a 13-year-old son also goes to such environments, understand that the 13-year-old child's health impact will be again very much different or much more than what will happen to a 30-year-old adult. And a boy and a girl will have some differences also. And this is also a very crucial thing in understanding why, when the boys were being raised by the grandparents, nothing happened to the boys' health. Because firstly, some of these boys, they were, one boy is 5 years old, one boy is 13 years old. So these ages mean that these children, when they were raised, the earth pollution levels, environmental conditions impacting the health of these children, all of these must have been much less. Other things related to family dynamics must have been less also. Like if the grandmother didn't retire until 60 or 65 years of age, until that age she was busy working. So because she was busy working, if something was going on in her family life, and if there were problems and challenges in their marriages, it got ignored because both partners were busy working. But the moment you are now not working, both people are not working, both people are retired at home, the troubles that people ignore when they were busy working, busy raising children, busy doing other social activities, that problem can escalate in a marriage when you are retired. At that point of time, it can escalate when you do not have a good marriage, when you do not have good marital things have not been built up in your marriage for a long time. And at those time points also, those factors also play a role in the reason why the child may not have been caretaken at a level at which the child could have been caretaken, why the father was behaving, why the people should ask this question, why the grandfather never asked the grandmother how was her lunch, or after lunch if she's sleeping, or if she was drowsy, or if she was playing the piano. And if he knew that the granddaughter was supposed to come back home, why he didn't ask that question. Or if he had he asked the question, had he actually observed the child in the car, but because he was just wanting to punish his wife, he may not have intimidated her that she forgot the child in the car. That could also be playing a role. So do you see, so many scenarios have not been explored by anyone, simply because you're not using human psychology, you're not using understanding that what questions need to be asked to determine what were the ancillary factors related to the child's death. You can't simply blame that the grandmother left the child in the car, that's why grandmother is responsible. Why is the grandmother only responsible? Why is the grandfather not responsible? Does he not own that house? Is he not related to the child? Should he not be careful about a child and concerned deeply about the fact that a child has been left for long in the car? Should he be concerned or should he not be concerned? Should he also have been intimidated by the daughter that my daughter is going to be in your home? Or should she not inform this to her father? That is also important. Why, if two caretakers are there in the house, why should it only be the woman's job? Why is also it not considered a man's job? It was okay in a world where men only used to work a lot, were hardworking men and consistently doing everything outside the home, and women were consistently doing inside the home. At that time, if you ascribe all family caretaking related roles to the wife, it makes sense. But the moment a wife has stepped outside the home and is doing outside home caretaking stuff, at that time the man has to instantly and slowly be also responsible for house related activities. And at that time he is also equally culpable for child caretaking things. If as an adult he was there in that premise while the child was there, this is something people should be considering in cases like this. Because if a single woman is there, there's no one around, she is of course 100% liable if she was the only adult around near the child. But if other adults were around near the child, they are also equally culpable to understand what was going on with the child or other factors related to the child. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So these things, even if in this case people have not analyzed it carefully, any future cases that come up, people need to start asking these questions and relevant questions and right pertinent questions related to child caretaking, related to child safety, related to child health related parameters. And then with this case, I keep mentioning, and people might still be wondering, how does this Uriel's case also impact other people who are working in the same businesses as Uriel's mother and grandmother, and maybe grandmother also. I don't know what grandmother was doing, but that is also important somewhat in her history. But now I'm going to bring the focus more into the construction business thing. The same things that I mentioned in my previous video of inhalation of glass particles, or inhalation of construction dust, or inhalation of other construction material that could be going on when someone is doing renovation activity. There are also so many people who do upcycling activity related to furniture upcycling, related to cabinet restructuring and upcycling, and all these things that people do. At those time points also, I have seen so many videos of women and men doing these activities without care about safety features that they should be using. Because if you're using with the old wood piece, or a home that is really old and you want to reconstruct those homes can have mold exposures when you're breaking down something, breaking down a furniture, breaking down a door or window, jarring open a door or window, or reconstructing the flooring of some place. And all of these cases, a lot of movement of particulate matter can be happening, and in that particulate matter's movement, if pesticides have been sprayed, pesticides can be released and pesticide exposure can happen. If mold was sprayed, mold related things can happen. If other micro insects were growing in those wooden furnitures, those insect related eggs and insect related other things can also be inhaled by someone. So anyone working in construction and woodworking industry and glass manufacturing or artifacts related industries, they are also the population who can learn from Uriel's death. Understand that while the baby is, and in Uriel's case, is that the only factor that was impacting her health? No, but that is one factor. And likewise with any adult also who is working in these industries, one factor will be your inhalation of, one day if I went, you're going to reconstruct your furniture table, and while working in the furniture table, it was a 30-year-old 50-year-old furniture, and there was some mold growing. You are not seeing the visible impact of the mold that is emitting from it. Possibly sometimes you may see it, and many people while they are on the sanding the surfaces and all, people don't show their faces, so I don't know whether they are wearing mask, protective gear and other things. But if you're not wearing it, you will invariably inhale. Even if after wearing a mask, depending on how well the mask is protecting you, you can still invariably inhale some particulate matter. And the longer you do these work, the more efficiently or more deeply you're doing these kind of work, or while engaged in your work, if you're not observing how much of inhalation is happening, your body will slowly shut you down from doing that work. Sometimes you will see, sometimes some people may not have understood this about their own health, but if they had been in the construction industry for 10 years and they were doing heavy construction work for many years, but suddenly their body is getting lethargic, getting tired, or shutting down in a way where they are not able to focus too much on their work. The focus related problem also, when I inhale some dust related to any microparticle, be it glass, be it microfiber, be it cement, be it lead, be it asbestos, because multiple sources can be there that you have been inhaling regularly in your work. When you're inhaling acrylic paint, all these, when you're inhaling, some of it is going in your lung, but do you see where my hand is moving? Some of it via your nasal passages goes up here also. That's why your eyes can also be impacted. Not even if you wear glasses, after inhalation it can go still into your eyes or eyes related cavities, and from those cavities, because there is a cavity behind our eyes, from there it can also go into your brains. So that's how also neuronal and nerve system and central nervous system related functional problems can also arise within us when we are exposed to high level of one toxin or multiple toxins in smaller levels, or moderate to high levels of different things that our daily life is exposing us to. And even though visibly we may or may not see the impact of it, or understand the deeper impact of it, eventually the long-term impact of it shows up as a health concern in our life. So if you are more mindful while doing your work, understand the deeper reasons why some safety features are there involved in doing some of your work, then you stay safe, stay more healthy, stay less unhealthy, are better able to protect yourself from the conditions that can impact your health long term. And if you are like a low socioeconomic status worker or a small business owner, you don't want to fall sick, the better the safety protocols you follow, the better will be your status of health, your family status of health. Whereas the lesser the mindful steps you follow, lesser the understanding about why these safety features should be followed, more will be the health impact on you, and the future repercussion of the health impact will show up as different symptoms in your body. In the glass video where the guy was handling the glass, one guy was wearing some protective gear, but the other guy you saw, after the glass particles had been crushed, he used his bare hands to lift those glass microparticles, and he's like, this is soft sand like thing. And it is true, some of it might be still soft sand, but depending on which glass material was used and crushed, some of it still may have microparticles, which he's a man, he's been working in this industry for a while possibly, and he may have a thicker calloused hands, and as a result of it, while the microparticles he lifted from his hands didn't have any impact on his health, maybe because he has a thick, rough, calloused hand. But imagine now, after touching this, he goes home, he doesn't know that because he's lifted microparticles of crushed glass, that some glass particles could still be in his hand, and he has lost sensation. Some people also, when they work in particular industries for a long time and they have developed a lot of calluses on their hands, or thick skin has been developed on the surface of their hands, they will also not feel anything. Some people also have that kind of a body where damage could be going on, they could have been having some internal damage, some microparticles of glass could have entered via their hand, and like how it can embed in your skin when splinters get into your hand, it can, after embedding into your skin, enter your blood circulation also slowly over time without you realizing it, if you don't feel the pain of the splinter or the microparticle. And that can happen to those people who do not have who have some sensation related, touching related anomalies, where they are not too sensitive to anything sharp or anything entering their system, because some people over time, because of multiple reasons again, can have this anomaly that they don't feel the pain, or they don't understand that something harmful has entered their body. That can also happen to some people. So while he's not understanding something harmful has entered his body, but if it did enter, a splinter had indeed entered his circulation, eventually will the health harm manifest or not manifest? So his unawareness doesn't cause him from stopping the health harm. What can stop him from not getting the health harm is when he wears safety equipments to minimize as much of health harm as possible, right? And then another factor is, if he had touched it, if he regularly works in this manner at this place where the recycling is being done, and some of it is getting into his clothes, some of it is getting into his hands, and he doesn't change his clothes before going home, and he drives a car or a truck to go home, whatever vehicle he drives in, what is happening to him and his clothes? The particles that fell on his clothes, that will fall on his car, and then if he has a baby that ever rides with him in the car, or a small child who is his brother, or a child who is his own baby, and if they also use that vehicle to drop the kids off to work, off to school, will the microparticles from his dress someday eventually land on the car seat? From that car seat, is it possible, when a baby or a boy is sitting in his car, it falls into the boy's skin also, boy's hands also? Is it possible or not possible? When will it happen? I don't know. How many times he has to do this before this will manifest in his life? I don't know, but someday it can happen. Someday he could go and meet after work at 6 o'clock, he decides to go and eat dinner with his girlfriend, and they are in a public bar, or they are in a restaurant eating food. While eating food, he wants to hold hands, kiss her, touch her face. At that time, if she suddenly jerks away, why is she doing that? It is possible that microparticles of glass were there in his hand, and when he touched her face, she jerked away because those pricks were those things that he is not able to feel in his hands, but her having softer skin in the face, it is pricking her face, and some microparticle from him can get transmitted to her as well. Or if they are having sex in the car, and he's a very unmindful person, and she doesn't know what work he does, and they are having sex in the car, and the car has microparticles. While having sex, is it possible now again for those particulate matter to get absorbed on her skin, to cause scratches on her skin, to cause micro scratches, or some of it might even enter her skin without her understanding, or some of it, if they are really soft dust particles, not if it is sharp, she will understand something hit her skin. But if it is not something sharp, she will not understand something hit her skin. Or if it was, coated in such a way that the sharpness didn't touch her skin when she was doing something in the car, sitting with him in the car, or he was driving her off to work or something, it might have touched her skin, but while she breathed it, the actual harm happened when, after touching her skin, after staying on her skin, eventually if the particles again, because they are microparticles, right? So microparticles are very dusty like particles, and it can have sharp consistency, it can have soft consistency. If it has soft consistency, when inhaled by her, maybe it may not cause any harm to her body. But if any of it has even a little bit of sharp consistency, and much of it has been absorbed or inhaled by her, then she also has the potential now to get some problems from the simple fact that even though she doesn't work in a glass factory, her boyfriend working in a glass factory can impact her health. Or if she has a child now, that when they are riding together in the same vehicle, again the child also has the potential of inhaling all these things if he's not a very careful person, not ready to, not doesn't keep his car and other things, his clothes clean, doesn't understand that he should wear protective equipment, because from his clothes also the dust particles can get transmitted to other places. Does that make some sense? I hope it does. And then there is another article I want to discuss, but I think I'll make a sixth video and a different video about them. So in here, understand, and same way with, it's not just simply true of glass, it is also true of if you are a painter and you do acrylic painting everywhere, or before doing acrylic painting you have to scrape also sometimes the surfaces of the older paints. So if you are scraping surfaces with older paints and you've worn clothes where it fell on your clothes, it fell on you're not wearing protective equipment or mask, all of it is going into your body, all of it is irritating your skin, all of it might be inhaled by you to lead to internal organ damages. The damages, it will not show up initially on the first day you do that work, first time you have, first few years you might do that work, but the eventual long term impact will start slowly showing up in your body as some condition, some deeper health factor. And the greater the callousness or unmindfulness or lack of understanding you had while doing the safety things, the greater is the impact going to be on your health. And the lesser the carefulness you had, while if you had more carefulness when doing these things, or if you mindfully understood why these safety protocols had to be followed, or why, some men, they might not have understood it, that something related to their work is impacting their spouse's health, but the spouse might have understood it. And if the spouse is telling, remove your clothes, wash your clothes, or put your clothes here in the washer dryer, don't sit with those clothes when you come inside the house, these are all also mindfulness practices. Why? Because those same microparticles that are impacting your health long term because you work in a factory for a long time, same things can impact again your family's health if you go home wearing those clothes with paint particles, lead particles, any other construction related particles, and you sit down. Or if you're doing a small business and operating a small business from your garage, if you enter your home, at that time also, every time if your wife tells wash your feet, wash your hands, change your clothes, she might be mindfully, subconsciously aware. She may not know all the details or the reasons why she's telling you to wash your clothes or keep your clothes in a separate place and things like that. But many times women again are ascribed as being over careful or asking you to do too much, and many men don't want to follow it, so they avoid following. If they don't like their spouses, they will not follow these protocols. But if they do like or do understand why the spouse is saying it, or at least trust that why the spouse is telling them to follow certain measures, then what happens is, the more you have followed the right relevant health supportive steps in your life, everyone in the family benefits from it. Whereas the more you do not follow steps that are health supportive for everyone also gets harmed equally from it. And sometimes it is true when a wife is telling wash your hands, if you are washing your hands and your hand is burning and that's why you don't want to listen to her, that is also a place where now you have to step in to understand intuitively why you are rejecting some steps, because sometimes rejecting certain steps are also very necessary. During coronavirus pandemic, everyone was being told wear mask, and I understand why the importance of mask wearing was important, but I was not always wearing mask. Instead of wearing mask, I was using simple clothes cotton clothes that I wear at home. I was using the clothes like this, either wearing cotton clothes that I have at home as a mask, or I was wearing because these cotton clothes were sometimes thicker material than the masks provided. Sometimes these cotton were more breathable material than the masks provided. Sometimes I had also cotton dupattas, like scarves. So I would wrap the scarf around like a mask, but it wouldn't be a very tight mask. Why? Because I was having active breathing distress, for which I tried to get management and therapy from a doctor, but the doctor was not considering my breathing distress as a separate problem than coronavirus problem. So they didn't do the separate investigation that needs to be done, that only a virus is not the only cause of someone's breathing distress. You can have breathing distress from construction dust, you can have breathing distress from mold in your house, and at that point of time I had both mold and construction dust related exposures and plus other exposures, but these were the two very easily identified, very easily known cause of exposures in these localities where I stayed. So even despite that, if you don't understand the implication of how construction dust impacts someone's health, if a provider doesn't understand it, their lack of understanding is not going to stop me from continuing having a illness as a result of exposures, if it is mass scale or high level exposure. And for me it was high level exposure. It was not simply like they're doing a minimum 5-minute or 1-day activity. For months and months, people in my area were doing construction activities. For years and years, in certain buildings construction has been going on, and in some areas one building came up, after 3 months another building is coming up, after 3 months. So like a whole year of exposure, 2-3 years of exposure has been going on for me. So do you understand, if I have 5-minute exposure, the level of health I will have is very different from when I have 100 days of exposure, when I have 1000 days of exposure. And the greater the exposure I have, and if my system is already slowly weakening, the more it gets untreated in the right way, the more the accumulation continues on, and worse is going to be my health outcome. And I am doing some active practices to ensure that I do not inhale them. Sometimes I went out of town, sometimes I did other protocols to ensure that I do not keep inhaling to minimize the contaminations. But when I am already in a weakened health status, when a sick person is there in your home, or you are very physically and debilitatingly sick, there are things you cannot do, which is very important for these husbands or these wives to wake up now, or husbands globally to wake up, when husbands don't do home safety, home caretaking features. Even fathers or brothers or grandfathers, when they are not doing it, why is it important for them to wake up? Is because women, if they are falling sick, firstly women will try to manage their sickness in their own way. Then if women go to the doctor, if you look at many medical misdiagnosis related tests or medical gaslighting related, not tests but videos about medical gaslighting, medical misdiagnosis, medical again and again going to a doctor related incidences of women, you will understand that women also have this problem. Women go to a doctor not at a primary stage, many women, because most women are not frivolous creatures. If you have had periods for many years in your life, and real painful periods for many years, they can't be frivolous creatures, because you consistently know how to bear a certain threshold of pain. If women are also in very rough marriages with partners who have rough sex with them, they also know how to manage a particular threshold of pain. So those kind of people who have had rough life, rough marriages, or places where they had to caretake themselves for a long time, those women are not on, even men also like that, men are also present. But women, why this is important for women's healthcare is because women won't go until they have reached a threshold of pain that is greater than the pain they have borne in their life. If they have borne a child, their level of pain to push them to go to a doctor might sometimes have to be even as great or equal the pain as bearing a child and giving birth to a child. If they had periods consistently with extreme pain, it has to be at least that level of pain as their periods. If they have no one to caretake them and they manage many of their health by themselves, again they will not go to a doctor until they have crossed the threshold of something that is not manageable by them. And this psychology of those women patients and those patients who do not go and easily, and there are also poor patients who will also not do this, because if you are poor also, if you are financially crunched, do you want to go to a doctor and go through 10 20 procedures to figure out what is wrong with your health? Or do you wait until you are really seriously sick where you cannot avoid going to a doctor, then only you will go to a doctor? So these all patient categories are the categories of people who are associated with Uriel and her family, and people who are working in the construction industry with Uriel's parents, and all of them. That's why I need to understand from her what are the local conditions related to the work life, what are the local conditions related to other people's work life, that could all be responsible in influencing your individual specific health conditions. And in order to if it is a local mass scale problem, the local mass scale problem can only be resolved when mass scale people take the initiatives to resolve the mass scale problem. When it is not a mass scale problem but it is individual specific choice related problem, business specific problem, the individual specific problem I have to solve. The problem that is related to construction industry, do I have to solve, or does the construction industry have to solve it? I can know all the theory, I can know all the reasons why it is making me sick. If I have a choice and I am lucky enough, I can move to a place where that construction activity is not going on. But someone who works in the construction industry, someone who around whom consistently construction is going on, they all, and someone who has no choice about moving, they all have to wake up to the fact that construction dust is impacting their health. If you want to minimize your health costs, or if you want to minimize the health impact of whatever you are inhaling, you have to take the right protocol relevant steps to ensure that it doesn't happen to you. Construction industry also needs to wake up, like how to better change their industry into a way where safer protocols are followed, better mindful job. You will also see, if less mindful people are working in the construction industry, they will do all kinds of haphazard work, callous work, unmindful work, unsafe work, leading to excess pollution creation. It's not just true of construction industry, same with healthcare industry. When I was an immunization pharmacist, there are OSHA protocols and other protocols I have to follow. If I become slowly a more mindful person in that work, I did that for a year or so. In that time, like 6 months, 1 year, another 2-3 months, another year, so like that year or so I did that work. So at that time, the more I do that work, the more mindful I become. I start reducing the wastage related to that. When I am a mindful worker, I start following more safer features of doing that work as I become more and more mindful worker. Whereas if you do not become a more and more mindful worker, or you do not understand how to become a mindful worker, what will happen is you will increase the wastage, you will increase the paradigms that will lead to waste, lead to more destructive activities in that area. That's why only you need the right protocols, right understanding of protocols, and also the right relevant personal nature to have that element of care and caretaking. You become mindful and thoughtful when you realize the deeper implications and impact of what you do on someone else's health, on someone else's life. People you may never meet. I am not going to meet the people where my syringes that I am using, or the tissues that I am wasting, or the alcohol that I am using, all that is getting dumped in my trash. I do not know where the OSHA waste is going to go, where the biological waste is going to go. I don't know it. But even though I don't know it, I am knowledgeable enough to know how it will impact a person, where the syringes now go and get burnt, or where the OSHA waste now goes, paper waste, alcohol waste, all this is going and dumping somewhere. And its impact, even if I don't live in that area, it is something that is impacting them. And if I live in some area where something like this, very similar to a practice that I used to do 10 years previously, is going around in my area, do I have that much intelligence to understand that it can also impact me now in this area, even though I'm not working in this field anymore? It's been 10 years since I gave 10 or more than 10 years since I gave anyone any injections, but the factors related to over injecting a population, factors related to over prescribing a medication, factors related to over use of chemicals and drugs, those can be very easily concluded, logically concluded, easily derived data can be found about it from the mere fact that what happened in the past, if it is continuing now and it has gone into a harmful level now, how it will impact you. So the data related to glass poisoning is not something new. Data related to lead poisoning, asbestos poisoning, any other construction work related poisoning is not a new data. Or related to allergies is also not a new data, or related to health harm is not a new data. But what is the new data is how, if new businesses are created for these work, how it impacts those people in those businesses, the children who are exposed to it inadvertently as a result of unknown exposures or inadvertent exposures. These are the things that in this century people have to understand, and doctors have to treat also, because if doctors simply keeps assuming it's a cough or cold or regular allergy and doesn't understand, if they work in glass factories, they have glass factory related problems. If the child's parent works in glass factory, then also the child, even if the child never went into a glass factory, they can still have some glass related problems. If you're not with factory workers, again it's very easy to understand if someone is working in a factory, someone is working in a construction business regularly. But if someone's parent is working in 2-3 different industries, or the parent is working in one industry where it is not directly related to glass factory but still glass related poisoning can happen, there where will the mindfulness of that happen? First the parent has to understand it, then the and the healthcare provider both have to understand these ancillary, secondary, tertiary conditions of people's lives that influence people's health. Otherwise what is going to happen is you will attribute it only to the final cause, which was the grandmother keeping the baby in the car, and the other causes that weakened her health, you're ignoring it. Because if it was not that hot a day, or it was a hot day but she was only left in the car for shorter hours than what has been said, or if she was if she was a more robust child, none of these health impacting things might have happened to her. Because it is also equally possible when the grandmother could have left in the past the grandson also sometimes in the car by accident and forgotten about it. And if she had done it for grandson also sometimes, but she only forgot about the grandson for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, maybe because the grandson was an older son or it was a boy. Boys can be more boisterous and voluble also. So if she had left a child in the car in the past for 5-10 minutes, and she could have forgotten, because again I said when can a person forget? If in my friend's home and some of my families who live in US, in their homes I have seen most of the time the husband unloading the child, husband putting the child in the car seat and things like that. Now if husband is always doing it and wife is doing that function a little less related to stroller loading and unloading, then what will happen is it's more of a practice of the husband to do. So sometimes if you have had a compatible marital partnership, you assume that the husband will do the child loading and unloading, because she's a grandmother. She might have had children also that she had put in car seats when she was younger, possibly, I don't know, but she might have also seen other parents and children doing it in the school areas when children are being dropped off in her school where she teaches them, right? So she could have seen it, maybe not, because if she was a public school teacher, those children may not have parents dropping them off. That is another factor. But whatever it is, a person can forget about it if it is a function normally done by the husband. But if the husband, out of a grouch, he doesn't want to do that and he wants his wife to learn that lesson, maybe he was trying to teach her that you do this unloading every day, but he went in a very indirect way of teaching her a lesson that could have also transpired that day. Another thing was the boys being boys. Now boys have a different reproductive organ than women, and women's reproductive organ, this is also a differentiating factor of health harm, because of a women's reproductive organ, the things absorbed via clothes, when clothing material is impacted, can enter a woman's body via their reproductive system more than it will enter a boy's body, because boy's reproductive system is a closed system. So as a result, women can have greater exposure to chemicals in their body. And because women have this greater exposure to chemicals, if women also have biologically some other different hormones also, all of those hormonal changes and hormonal differences and biological differences and biochemical changes happening in their body also results in same number of chemicals causing different impact in different people's lives. Because there's another thing that I was guided to speak about. If you have heard of a case, I think it was related to Walgreens related case from many years back, where in Walgreens there was a pharmacist who was dispensing continuously some medications to a family, where the family was taking clonidine. It was clonidine at the time. Clonidine is used as a heart medication or a blood pressure medication, but sometimes it can also help in because of its impact on the heart, it can also cause someone to, if there is a crying child or a cranky child, it has a side effect of causing drowsiness. So because of the drowsiness side effect, a child when it's crying, if a parent gives them that clonidine, the child will fall asleep. So this parent was, I believe that parent was picking up the medication for themselves, but they were giving their medication to the child. And this is a very odd thing people do in US. I didn't know that people used to do this. People can do this, but people do. People who are very irritated with their children, do not want their children to cry. Not just with clonidine. There are adults when you are traveling in the plane. I don't know if you've ever read those plane incidences where babies are crying in the plane, and there are women who have been suggested by other passengers, why don't you give some medicine or anti-allergy medication to your kid? The kid will fall asleep. Because again, the same thing, the diphenhydramine or other ingredients in an anti-allergy medication can have a side effect of causing sleepiness and drowsiness in a child. So these are like some off the market uses of drugs that parents can or grandparents can do to keep a child quiet. Like if they are indeed a little neglectful or little less caretaking oriented, what they will do is they will pour something in the drink of a child or give something, crush the tablet and give it in the food given to the child, so that the child will consume it, and after consuming a particular drug they will fall asleep and they will not have any health impact from it. Because if they don't have any health impact, well and good, the parent gets away with doing this, the grandparent gets away with doing this. But on the other hand, if the grandparent, and here in Uriel's case we don't know which grandparent did it, but either grandparents could have done it, both could have done it. And what happens is, if they don't want a crying child, if they don't want the crankiness of it or whatever, and in the Walgreen case what has happened is the parent kept picking up prescription either for the child or for themselves or both, but they were picking unusual amount of prescriptions, and the pharmacist tried to, when unusual amount of prescription is being picked up, some pharmacists, if you are a mindful pharmacist, you will also report it. So the pharmacist did try to report it to the doctor, but the doctor was given some excuses, possibly by the parent. The parent could have said, I have lost the prescription, this, that. But while doctor's offices, usually if they are very much more busier than a pharmacy or little less mindful, or some new staff has come, and because people who are covertly smart and manipulative, they also know personality types very easily. So they know how to manipulate. They know, like, if they catch the hospital staff or pharmacy staff who is more naive, they can easily get away with more refills. So let's say in Walgreens there are 4 pharmacists or 3 pharmacists working there. Only one pharmacist has become aware that something suspicious is going on. If the other pharmacists are not aware about it, again the prescription can be filled by some other pharmacist, even if one pharmacist reported it. In the doctor's office also, even if the doctor gets convinced that something is going wrong, again if the nurse or nurse practitioner or PA or someone else working there in that office, if they are naive or new or don't know this patient manipulates to get prescriptions, in that time point also all these mishaps can happen, and slyly the patient can get extra medicines. So like that, or there are other patients who also do this, which I have seen in my practice also. Patients will go from one doctor to the other, that if one doctor's office is not giving them prescriptions, they will now go to another doctor and pretend there as if they have lost their prescription, or the last visit to the doctor was 1 year back when it was only 2 weeks back. And like that they will accumulate more drugs, and then they take those drugs, and if the mother father both are I think were drugging the child to keep the child quiet so that the child wouldn't cry, and eventually It was not a drug that usually leads to drug death of children, but still that drug, because it's not a drug that like it was not a narcotic drug or a illegal drug that should lead to drug overdose related death. But drug overdose related death can happen with any drug, any medication. So any medication, if overused beyond the normal prescription limits, if given to someone without their knowledge and long amounts of it has been used, or if you do not, because you are not a doctor, you are not a pharmacist, the parents don't know how much of that drug will be harmful when given in large amounts. So the parents kept giving it, and it kept accumulating in the child, leading to the child's death from overdose, right? Similarly, this is also the haloperidol that I mentioned in one of my previous videos. Haloperidol or any other antipsychotic, antidepressants that the parents, grandparents, anyone could have been using, they could have decided that these drugs have side effect of sleepiness, so they decided to possibly give it to Uriel to see whether she will sleep while taking it. And they could have very well done that through the other grandsons as well. Other children could have also been given a little bit of the drug in the food so that they can fall asleep. And if they have done it, but the grandsons been more, maybe if they had more robust build, or because they were boys and their biochemistry was a little different, or because those boys, when they were caretaken by the grandparents, the mother was also living in the house, so that's why, mother was majorly caretaking the children, so the grandparents maybe didn't give the child as much of any of the drugs. That can also be a factor. And if that was deliberately giving a child any medicine was not involved, then inadvertent exposure is from the way in which I said, if environment pollution is there, from there inadvertently something could have happened. But whether it was deliberate one, inadvertent one, this also needs to be investigated for the safety of other children, and also needs to be investigated as to who did it. Because if the wrong person gets convicted, or only one person involved in the whole thing gets convicted, but the other people involved don't get convicted, if some malicious or intentional things were done, then if the other people involved are not caught, they will continue doing this to other children also, and then you will have some other disaster unfold in some other child's life. That's why it is important. And also it's important because even if whatever I'm saying in all of my videos are complete speculation, not true at all of Uriel's case, are there other kids with some similar circumstances like what I have discussed here, who could have the same kind of health impact going on with them, which now needs further scrutiny, further examination? If the child hospitalizes, or if the child dies, or if there's suspicion surrounding the child's death, the right ascriber of who was responsible or what conditions were responsible for the child's death is very much necessary to be examined. One of which I will discuss using another case. When I kept saying Nicole, I did a search about Nicole infant death, and you can also do that Google search, and the first case that came up for me, that is the first case I'm going to discuss, because in that case also there are enough elements to show some other factors were going on in the child's death than what the hospital has assumed has happened, and this needs to be and must get investigated. Otherwise, someone who was possibly not responsible for the child's death might get prosecuted and convicted for it. So it is important that the right scrutiny happens in that case. So I will discuss that in my next video. And until then, anyone has questions, comments, wants to connect with me, feel free to connect with me. Thank you very much. Have a great day.